Mr. McArdle, in my mind, you're a special person because you've given almost all your adult life to others. Now, you served in the NYPD. I want you to tell me your story, your 9/11 story of how often you were down there and how you ended up down there to begin with. Go right ahead, Mr. McArdle.
And on 9/11, that particular day, I was retired from the New York City Police Department. I was on what they call terminal leave, and I got a few phone calls at the house that morning. One from a fireman, a fire marshal, and he said, "John, are you looking at the TV?" So I said, "No, I wasn't." He says, "Go turn on the news." So I went and I turned on the news, and I saw that there was a plane had went into the building of the North Tower. When I saw that, I was standing there with my babysitter, and then I see the second plane go in, and I was at home, and I said, "Florence, I have to leave." And I immediately got in my car, went down to my old command, got in my uniform, and headed straight down towards the Trade Center. By the time I had gotten down to the Trade Center, I was around the City Hall area, and Building 1 had already just collapsed. So there was a lot of dust and debris in the air. And what I did was I went into the Woolworth building and called for a recall of all the ESU personnel to that location. And as these guys came in, we could see that they were in all sorts of different shape as far as shock, hurt, and kind of really not ready to go back in and do anything. But as you know, that particular day, more and more people started to flood into the city, especially first responders, to try and help out. So that particular day, we ended up moving from the Woolworth building over to Stuyvesant High School. That's where we had set up our command post and started to commit operations from there. That particular day, I worked all that day and throughout the night. When we were working that night, I actually had spoken to my boss and said, "Look, we have to take half of these guys and get them out of there." And meanwhile, we were in the process of a rescue operation, recovering the 2 Port Authority cops that were still alive. And my boss had said to me, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Nobody will be here in the morning. Everybody will be spent. We have to send guys home." So I stayed throughout the night and continued to work the next day. And we started to develop plans. And then, FEMA and the fire department and all of us started to work together.
So let me ask you this. When 9/11, when the planes hit, how long were you down there?
I was down there for the first month and a half. I never left the site. I actually slept in a little on a cot that I had in the back of the command post. So I would work a number of hours, and I would just work basically until exhaustion, and then go lay down for a couple hours, and then be up again.
And so
that was not unusual for if you worked with FEMA. I was out at the Oklahoma City bombing. I think the first time we got to sleep there was like 40 hours later.
Okay, so wait, I'm trying to understand. Not only are you NYPD retired emergency services, but you also worked for FEMA.
Yes, I was part of New York Task Force 1, which was a combination of fire department, EMS, and police department personnel with special rescue techniques and specialized equipment to do, building collapses and all sorts of, respond to all sorts of emergencies, no matter what they were.
So with FEMA, what are some of the high-profile things you've done?
Well, I was in Oklahoma City. I was there for the Atlantic Park bombing.
In Georgia?
In Georgia.
Okay.
I was involved with a couple of hurricanes down in the Virgin Islands. Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic. So I've been to a few different places.
Talk to me about your health now. Tell me what happened.
Well, as a result of working that particular day and the days that came to follow, being a supervisor or being in charge down there, we didn't have the proper mask in the beginning, only for the simple fact that there was a flood of those masks needed and they weren't available. The second part of that with the mask is that if you had to give any kind of orders or do anything on the radio, you needed to remove the mask to talk. And most of the time, if you were a supervisor, you were talking and giving direction as opposed to keeping the mask on. There was a number of times that we had the military come up and do flyovers of the site so that we could take aerial photos and figure out our 24-hour plan, what we were going to do for the next 24 hours, what we were going to do for the next 48 hours, what we were going to do for the next 72 hours. Those flights were pretty regular, and what they would do is they would send us the pictures back, and we could actually look and see how much progress we were making. They did send a team up from Washington to take air samples of the site. We went up in a helicopter, and it was scientists from Washington, like I said, and we never got the results of the air test from that particular incident. We had asked for them a number of times, and we were constantly told that the air was okay. But meanwhile, if you had worked down there, there was a smell and there was a constant odor that as soon as you got to a certain part of Manhattan, you could already smell it. And this was for months, and not only was, that smell permeated our site, it also permeated the landfill out in Staten Island. So, as much as we got, the people out in Staten Island had gotten the same thing, and anybody else that was involved. Now, there was a lot of people that worked, and came below Canal Street. Anybody that came really below Canal Street was affected because all of the dust and, cleaning solvents and the glass and all of that dust was all over the place. So, there were many people affected.
So, talk to me about your prostate cancer. Tell me.
Oddly enough, the prostate cancer, it was during a routine medical exam last year. I went to my doctor, and my PSAs were over 10, and he says, "John, you have to go to see a urologist." And I went, I saw a urologist, and they did some tests, they did a biopsy, and my prostate was loaded with cancer. What had happened then is the doctor had brought my family in, my wife and my daughter, one daughter that was a nurse, and said, we don't have any options yet, it has to come out. And they actually rearranged the hospital schedule to get me in as soon as they could to get it out. As of right now, I'm okay. As far as the prostate cancer goes, but I've had a history of cancer. I've had melanoma 3 or 4 times. I've had breathing problems. I've had AFib as a result of the sleep apnea that has been caused by this. I do have breathing problems. It was funny, we were on a vacation not too long ago where we were in Colorado, and I couldn't go into the higher elevations. I had to stay low because I couldn't breathe, and my wife and her girlfriend went up to the top of the mountain. So it kind of limits some of the stuff that you can do.
So you're telling me that because the prostate cancer just recently was diagnosed, that because of the timing, you're looking at a payment that's only at 30%.
I believe that they had cut the payments, down to like 70% or 50% in certain cases, which I think is terribly wrong. I mean, there's a lot of money that's spent in this country, as we know, and it's wasted. And when you're not taking care of your veterans and you're not taking care of your first responders, that's a pretty sad state of affairs. I look at, we were told when we first started this assignment that we probably wouldn't see any of these effects or abnormalities until years and years later, which is in fact the case, because in 15 years later, a lot of people started to develop these different, diseases and anomalies as a result of what had happened that particular day. So when you look at the big picture of things, there's people out there that are still going to be affected for a long time to come, and probably get no relief whatsoever. And when you look at today's medical bills and how our healthcare system is, everything in the flux that it's in, it's very worrisome, because I wanted to leave certain things to my family. I hope that I don't end up having to sell my house, to pay for medical bills.
Okay. Okay, so wait, I want you to make this point one more time. Number of years, emergency services. I'm laughing because it's so sad. A number of years, emergency services, FEMA, and if this doesn't work out, you may have to sell your home.
Well, just look at it this way. Say if all of these things start getting cut, okay, and now medical bills start to come in. I'm not going to be able to, pay a mortgage and then, pay all these medical bills. I mean, this is something that actually, should be covered. It's the same with these soldiers that come back, from where they serve. They have all sorts of things happening. Even the PTSD, a lot of different anomalies have never still been recognized, as legitimate claims from the World Trade Center. When I look at one particular guy, one guy that I know that was a sergeant down there, he has a blood disorder, and it cost him $10,000 a month for medication to control his blood problem. I looked at another guy, something not covered by the World Trade Center, muscular dystrophy. These are things that are above the normal range. So most of the people that are down there had suffered different ailments, but they shouldn't be getting them at this time or this period in their life. They seem to be getting them a lot earlier than they should have. And it's an ongoing thing. It's funny, we used to pick up the phone and used to say, how you doing, what are you doing this weekend? Now, the first thing when you're picking up the phone and you're calling somebody from 9/11, it's how you feeling, how you making out. That's the conversation. And it's unbelievable that that's the way it goes. And
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
How old are you?
I am 64.
64. Okay, one more time. I need you to tell me, and then we're done. How does all of this make you feel?
It makes me mad in a way. I see, the wasteful spending that goes on, with government sometimes. And when you look at not just even first responders, but when you look at like the veterans, the two groups that really take care of everybody, okay, we should be taking care of us first and everybody else second. And it's kind of sad to see what's going on today. It really is. And it kind of hurts to know that, that particular day when, things were really going bad and the buildings were coming down, people weren't running away. They were running towards the buildings. I remember that particular day. I was on the corner of Greenwich Street when Building 7 was coming down. And as 7 was coming down, 2 cops I had to grab because they were running towards the building. I mean, you just shake your head and you say to yourself, these guys very dedicated, men and women. You look at all of the different things that you did, and you could hear the different stories of, like, the Morris Smiths, a woman whose, bodies are falling out of the building and she's going back and forth taking people out. All of these different people that were killed, and it's not just them, it's the firemen, it's the EMS workers, it's everybody. So it's a real shame that it's come to this,
I have one last question. Considering what's going on with your health, and considering what's happened down at 9/11, okay. Considering what's going on with your health, considering what's going on, what happened with 9/11, so on, would you do it again?
You know what? I that's a very good question, and I think that I would. I went into the police department to serve. It's just like the soldiers and all of the other policemen, the firemen, the people who go to EMS. There's a certain calling and there's a certain group of people that are always going to be there to do the difficult jobs. You look at some of these poor soldiers that come back from Afghanistan. They lose 2 legs, and they want to get back into the fight. And it's the same with these first responders. These first responders are a special breed of people, and to tell you the truth, I'm very proud to be one of them. I'm proud of the work that I did in the police department. My daughters and my family are proud of it, and I'm proud of all of the guys that I work with. I met a lot of surprising individuals down there, guys that I didn't have as much respect for, or didn't think too much about, but to see what they did and see what they went through, I gained respect for so many different people down there. It was truly amazing.
So I want to be clear. After all you've been through, you would still do it again?
We have to. But I don't think there's any question that we have to, as individuals, we have to help other people. I mean, it's in our nature. That's who we are. That's the soul of ourselves, to help others. I mean, how many people go in harm's way to protect others? There's, thousands of cops and firemen out there today, knowing the risk of, you could have another 9/11. If you have another 9/11, do you think that these guys are not going to go? They're all going to go. Everybody's going to do what they have to do. And, to tell you the truth, we talk about the first responders and we talk about, all of these different people. But there were a lot of volunteers. There were a lot of citizens who jumped in to help out. And to tell you the truth, I think for the first couple months, it was the proudest time of my life to say that I was an American, because every time, you would go around the sites, you would see these flags and you would see these people coming from all over the country. Louisiana, just coming on their own dime to make food, to do whatever they could to help the first responders. We have a great country, and we have a lot of great people in it, and it's because of who we are as people. We are a good people.